On the third wedding anniversary, Henry's white moonlight Selena made a high-profile return to the country, causing the trending searches to explode. Everyone in the circle was waiting to see how this substitute who had usurped the nest, would be swept out the door, crying with tears streaming down like pear blossoms in the rain. Henry sat on the sofa, a cigarette pinched between his fingertips, his brows tightly furrowed, as if deliberating how to broach the subject with me in a way that would seem less cruel. I didn't give him that opportunity. Smiling, I gently pushed a document in front of him, with the cover embossed in gold letters, Resignation Report. Henry, my voice was as calm as if I were giving a project report. Miss Selena has returned, so it's time for me to resign from this wife position. This is the divorce agreement, the property handover list, and a marriage work summary for these 3 years. Please review and sign. The 10,000 lines he had prepared were all stuck in his throat as he looked at me in shock, as if seeing me for the first time. Henry's astonishment lasted only 3 seconds before being replaced by an offended anger. He extinguished the cigarette, picked up the meticulously bound resignation report, and scanned me with cold eyes. "Nina, what trick are you playing now?" His voice carried his habitual condescending scrutiny, as if anything I did was merely a clumsy ploy to play hard to get. I maintained a professional smile. "Henry, I'm not playing any tricks. Contractual integrity is my most important professional ethic. Our marriage was originally a transaction. Now that the premises of the deal have changed, my initiative to terminate it is the most dignified approach. 3 years ago, the GU Group faced a broken capital chain and urgently needed to form a marriage alliance with my family to secure funding. As for me, an illegitimate daughter unloved by her father and mother, my only value was this face that bore a 70% resemblance to Selena. Henry needed a granddaughter-in-law to comfort his gravely ill grandmother, Mrs. Henry, to silence the gossiping crowds, and a substitute that allowed him to reminisce through objects. I needed a huge sum of money to take my mother away from the Shin family's control and seek peaceful treatment abroad. We hit it off immediately. The contract clearly stated in black and white, the marriage would last 3 years or automatically terminate upon Selena's return to the country. I would play the role of Henry's wife well, and he would pay me remuneration. Now, Selena has returned. It's time for me to clock out. Dignified? Henry sneered, throwing the report onto the coffee table with a dull thud. You've reminded me indeed, Selena is back, and you should indeed scram. What, do you think the money I gave you isn't enough, and you want to get more through divorce? The contempt in his eyes was almost tangible, stinging the skin. The smile on my face remained unchanged, but my heart was already calm. Over these 3 years, I've heard similar words too many times. In his eyes, I, Nina, was just an unscrupulous, insatiable gold digger. Henry, you've misunderstood. I handed over another document. This is a copy of the prenuptial property agreement. The Part 1 signed has already been scanned and filed with my lawyer. I'll leave with nothing, taking not a penny. As for the salary you paid before, the accounts are clear and all in this work summary, you can check them anytime. My work summary was extremely detailed, in PPT format, totaling 54 pages. From his daily dietary preferences and allergen list, to suggestions for outfit pairings for different occasions, from reminders for his various important anniversaries, to handling schemes for the complex interpersonal relationships in the GU family, even including his over 100 ties, with charts clearly marking which suit each one paired best with for optimal effect. The last page was my concluding statement. Thank you, Henry, for the platform and opportunities provided over these 3 years. I have successfully completed all KPIs for the position of Henry's wife. Wishing you and Miss Selena a harmonious union for 100 years and the early birth of a noble son. Henry's face turned ashen inch by inch as he flipped through the document. He probably thought I would cry, make a scene, and cling desperately to the identity of Henry's wife like a shrew. He never imagined that I would transform our 3-year marriage into a stark, quantifiable business collaboration in an almost ruthless manner. Nina, you really are something. He squeezed out these words through gritted teeth, his eyes surging with complex emotions I couldn't understand. You're too kind, Henry. This is my professional integrity. I stood up, straightened the skirt he had never glanced at properly, and said lightly, "My personal belongings are already packed, the moving company will arrive in half an hour. Before Miss Selena moves in, I'll restore everything here to its original state." "Oh right, and this?" I took out a small USB drive from my bag and placed it on the table. "This is the highest permission password for the Villa's smart home system, as well as the back-end management passwords for all your electronic devices. Previously, for the convenience of taking care of your daily life, I unified the management. Now, I'm returning them all to you." After speaking, I nodded slightly to him, turned around, and walked away without a trace of reluctance. "Stop." His voice, suppressing anger, came from behind. I stopped but didn't turn back. "Are you so eager to leave?" His voice carried a hint of hoarseness he himself hadn't noticed. I turned around, finally dropping that professional fake smile, and looked at him calmly. "Henry, when an actor wraps up filming, shouldn't they immediately break character and head to the next scene? My next scene is freedom." After saying that, I didn't linger and went straight to the walk-in closet on the second floor. I didn't have much stuff, a 28-inch suitcase was enough. In 3 years, I never added anything truly belonging to me here. What I wore and used were all bought by Henry according to Selena's preferences. I was just an actor in costume, and costumes can't be taken away. I changed into the white t-shirt and jeans I wore when I arrived, neatly folded the expensive custom long dress, and placed it on the bed. Half an hour later, the moving company's truck stopped punctually at the villa entrance. When I dragged my only suitcase downstairs, Henry was still sitting on the sofa in the same position as when I left, with a long ash accumulated on the cigarette between his fingers. He didn't look at me, just staring fixedly at the glaring resignation report on the coffee table. I didn't look at him either, walking past him without glancing sideways. The moment I stepped out of the villa gate, the afternoon sunlight fell on me, warm and cozy. I took a deep breath of air filled with the scent of freedom, feeling utterly relaxed. Goodbye, Henry. Goodbye, Henry's wife. Hello, Nina. My new residence was a high-end apartment in the city center, in a bustling location with strict security. This was bought with the money I earned myself over these 3 years. Yes, besides the salary Henry paid, I also used his identity and resources to make several quite successful investments. He knew nothing about it. In his eyes, I was just a brainless vase who only knew how to depend on him. My best friend Lila was already waiting in the apartment. As soon as she saw me, she rushed up and gave me a big hug. "Nina, congratulations on your release from prison." She laughed happier than I did. Lila is a top domestic divorce lawyer and the only one who knows the inside story of my marriage. That extremely harsh prenuptial agreement was drafted word by word with her help. "How do you feel? Have you seen that legendary white moonlight?" she asked gossipingly while helping me unpack. "No, I saw photos on the trending searches. She does look quite like me," I said indifferently. "TCH, it's her who looks like you, right?" Lila sneered disdainfully. "When I first saw you 3 years ago, I thought with your looks and temperament, it's a pity you didn't enter the entertainment industry. That Selena is at best a low-end version of you." I smiled, neither confirming nor denying. Whether similar or not, what does it matter? In Henry's heart, Selena is the cinnabar mole, the white moonlight, while I am just a smear of mosquito blood on the wall, a grain of rice stuck on cloves. Alright, let's not talk about them. I clapped my hands. Sis is now single again, regaining freedom. We must party tonight. Bar or KTV, you choose. Absolutely. Lila raised both hands in agreement. I'll call people right away. Tonight, no going home until drunk, celebrating our Nina's return to the scene. That evening, we booked a private room at the city's top club. Lila called a group of friends, all lawyers and financial elites. Everyone played freely. I removed the gentle and virtuous Henry's wife mask and returned to the real Nina. Wearing a spaghetti-strap miniskirt and bold makeup, I danced exuberantly on the dance floor. After 3 rounds of drinks, I was slightly tipsy and leaned on the booth sofa to rest. A handsome man holding a wine glass sat beside me, smiling gently. Beauty, alone? I raised an eyebrow, about to speak, when a cold voice came from not far away. She's not alone. I looked toward the voice and saw Henry standing at the private room door with a dark face, followed by his group of cronies, all wearing expressions of anticipating a good show. Henry's gaze was like two ice-quenched knives shooting straight at me, as if to execute me by 1,000 cuts. The flirting handsome guy was obviously intimidated by Henry's aura, awkwardly put down his glass, and slipped away. Henry strode over to me, looking down from above, his eyes filled with raging fury. Nina, on the first day of divorce, you're so eager to come out and fool around? His voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to instantly silence the entire private room. Everyone's gazes focused on me, full of inquiry and curiosity. Lila wanted to step forward to argue, but I stopped her with a look. I leisurely swirled the wine glass in my hand, the crimson liquid tracing elegant arcs on the glass wall. I lifted my eyes, meeting his angry gaze, smiling charmingly yet distantly. Henry, please watch your words. First, we have no relationship anymore, you have no right to interfere in my private life. Second, gathering with friends isn't fooling around, it's socializing. Third. I paused, stood up, leaned close to his ear, and whispered in a voice only we could hear, even if I really am fooling around, it's not your turn as an ex-husband to manage it. After all, your white moonlight has returned, hasn't she? His body instantly stiffened. I satisfactorily saw the anger in his eyes solidify, replaced by a trace of embarrassment and disbelief. He probably never thought that I, who had always been completely obedient and submissive to him, would say such rebellious words. You. He was so angry he couldn't speak. One of his childhood friends behind him, Zach, who usually loved to see me make a fool of myself, couldn't help but jump out. Nina, don't be shameless. Henry coming to find you is giving you face. You think after divorce you're something? Just an abandoned second-hand good. These words were extremely ugly. Before I could speak, Lila exploded. Zach, clean your mouth. Who's the second-hand good? Our Nina is beautiful and wealthy, men wanting to pursue her could line up from here to France. Unlike some people, guarding a green tea bitch like a treasure, thinking they'd picked up a rare gem. Who are you calling a green tea bitch? Another man stood up, it was Henry's close buddy and Selena's #1 supporter, Quentin. Seeing a fight about to break out, I gently pulled Lila. Arguing with mad dogs only lowers your own level, I said indifferently. Then, I turned to Henry, the smile completely gone from my face. Henry, if you're here to catch adultery, then you're disappointed. If you're here to reminisce, sorry, we have no old times to reminisce about. If there's nothing else, please leave with your friends and don't disturb us. I issued the eviction order. Henry's face was extremely ugly. He probably had never been treated like this in his life. He stared at me fixedly, as if trying to find even the slightest trace of pretense on my face. However, he was disappointed. My gaze was as calm as a pool of still water, without love, without hate, not even resentment. To me, he was truly just a former boss with whom I had signed a 3-year contract. In the end, he said nothing, just gave me a deep look, his expression so complex I couldn't interpret it. Then, he turned around and left the private room with his group of equally shocked friends. The private room returned to noise, but the atmosphere was noticeably subtle. Lila looked at me worriedly. Nina, are you okay? I shook my head, drained the last sip of wine from the glass, and smiled. I'm fine, better than ever. Yes, better than ever. When I broke free from the shackles of the identity Henry's wife, I discovered that the outside world was so vast and boundless. The next day, I woke up with a hangover, my head splitting. Just as I picked up my phone, I saw Henry's name flashing on the screen. Without hesitation, I hung up and blocked him. All in one go. Soon after, an unknown number called. I answered, and from the other end came Henry's voice suppressing anger. Nina, you dare block me? Henry, we're already divorced. As a qualified ex, you should lie quietly in the other's contact list like you're dead. Blocking is the most basic respect. I responded flatly. You. He seemed quite angered by me, taking a deep breath before continuing. Grandma wants to see you. Margaret was the only person in the Gu family who truly treated me well. The old lady had poor eyesight and always thought I was Selena. Over these 3 years, she held my hand, calling me Selena, giving me the long-missing warmth of grandparent-grandchild affection. This was also the only warm part in this transaction for me. I was silent for a moment. How is her health? Not good. Henry's voice sank. The doctor says it's just these few days. She's been muttering about you, wanting to see you one more time. My heart tightened. Okay, I'll go. After hanging up, I changed into plain clothes, without makeup, and took a taxi to the Gu family old residence. When the car stopped at the familiar carved iron gate, I felt a sense of being in another world. The butler Thomas saw me, his eyes reddened, and sighed, "Madam, you've finally come. The old lady refuses to eat, just waiting for you." He still called me madam. I nodded and followed him into the house where I had lived for 3 years. In the living room sat an unfamiliar woman. She wore a white dress, with long hair over her shoulders, a gentle temperament, and features that indeed resembled mine by 70%. She must be Selena. Seeing me, she stood up, her face showing just the right amount of apology and awkwardness. "You must be Miss Nina?" "Hello, I'm Selena." Her voice was soft and weak, like a delicate flower unable to withstand the wind. I nodded faintly, considering it a greeting. Henry came down from upstairs, and seeing us two standing together, his gaze dazed for a moment. He walked to Selena's side, naturally wrapping his arm around her waist, the action intimate and full of possessiveness, as if declaring sovereignty to me. I just found it amusing. He probably thought seeing this would break my heart, make me jealous. Unfortunately, my heart was without ripples, even feeling like yawning. "Grandma is waiting for you upstairs," he said to me in a stiff tone. I didn't look at them again and went straight upstairs. Margaret's room was filled with a faint medicinal smell. The old lady lay on the bed, emaciated to just skin and bones, but her spirit was still okay. Seeing me, her cloudy eyes instantly brightened. "Selena, you've come." She extended her withered hand toward me. I quickly walked over, held her hand, my eyes heating up. "Grandma, I'm here." This address, I had called for 3 years. "Good child, you've lost weight." She touched my face distressedly. "Has that stinky boy Henry bullied you? Tell Grandma, Grandma will stand up for you." I shook my head, smiling. "No, he's been good to me. It's me being busy with work and not taking care of myself." "No matter how busy work is, you must pay attention to your health." The old lady nagged on, her spirits much better than before. I chatted with her for a long time, read the newspaper to her, fed her half a bowl of porridge. Only when she fell deeply asleep did I tiptoe out of the room. When I went downstairs, only Henry was in the living room. Selena was nowhere to be seen. He sat on the sofa, looking at me with complex eyes. "Thank you." He spoke, his voice somewhat hoarse. "No need to thank me," I said calmly. "I came to see Grandma, it has nothing to do with you." After saying that, I was about to leave. "Wait." He called me. I stopped. "Is something missing at home?" he asked, with a hint of uncertainty in his tone. I was stunned for a moment before realizing what he meant. After I left, I took away all traces of my presence. The plants I personally cared for were sent to the flower and bird market, the aromatherapy I selected was thrown into the trash, the cushions I habitually placed on the sofa were stored away. This home he had lived in for 3 years was restored to a cold, model room for him alone. "Nothing is missing," I said indifferently, "I just cleared away things that don't belong here." He was silent. After a long time, he asked, "Those were all done by you? Otherwise?" "Henry, you don't think flowers grow automatically in this home, cushions appear on the sofa by themselves, or your stomach automatically avoids allergens, do you?" My tone carried a hint of sarcasm. In the contract we signed, creating a warm family atmosphere was also one of my job responsibilities. Now that I've resigned, these value-added services are naturally cancelled. His face became ugly once again. Leaving the Gu family old residence, I went straight to the company. Yes, I have my own company. A small investment firm called Chinian Capital. This was founded with the money from my first investment, and Lila is one of the partners. Over these 3 years, while playing the docile and incompetent Henry's wife, I was decisive in the capital market, expanding territory. Henry knew nothing about this. He was too arrogant and never truly understood me. He only saw the face similar to Selena's but had no interest in exploring the soul beneath that face. Back at the company, Lila was fretting over an acquisition case. Seeing me, she looked like she saw a savior. "Nina, you're finally back. Starlight Technology is dead set on the price and won't budge. What do we do?" I took off my coat, changed into business attire, and instantly entered work mode. What's their trump card? Core technology patent. That Sky Dome system is their moat for the next 10 years, priced at $3 billion, not a cent less. I walked to the huge floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the endless traffic below, a playful smile curling my lips. The Sky Dome system? What a coincidence. The patent holder is me. This was an artificial intelligence algorithm I anonymously developed before marrying Henry. It was just a hobby at the time, but unexpectedly, it caught the eye of Starlight Technologies' founder, leading to a technology for equity collaboration. Over these years, I've existed as a mysterious behind-the-scenes shareholder. No need to negotiate with them. I turned around and said to Lila, I have a way to make them proactively lower the price. Lila's eyes lit up. What way? Trade secret. I winked at her. In the following days, I immersed myself fully in work. Although Chinian Capital is not large in scale, the team is capable, projects are high quality, and it has gained some fame in the circle. I enjoyed this feeling of strategizing and controlling everything. This was 10,000 times happier than being a worry-free but soulless Henry's wife. During this time, Henry called me several times using different unknown numbers. The content was nothing more than Grandma mentioning me again or something missing at home. He seemed completely unaware that the home he spoke of was no longer my home. I couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him and directly had my assistant set up a call firewall to block all unknown numbers. The world finally became quiet. A week later, I arranged to meet Starlight Technologies' CEO at a high-end restaurant. When I arrived, he was already there. Seeing me, the always arrogant Leonard showed obvious surprise on his face. "Miss Nina?" I smiled and sat opposite him. "Leonard, long time no see." Leonard was my university senior who had once pursued me madly. After I married Henry, he was depressed for a long time. He probably never imagined that the mysterious boss of the influential Chinian Capital and the junior sister who rejected him back then were the same person. Even less that the true patent holder of the Sky Dome system, which he regarded as the company's lifeline, was sitting right in front of him. "Chinian Capital, you founded it?" The shock on his face was beyond measure. "Just lucky," I said understatedly. He looked at me with complex eyes, shock, regret, and a subtle admiration. "So, Nina invited me today for Sky Dome?" He quickly regained calm and entered negotiation mode. "No," I shook my head, picked up the teacup, and gently blew on it. "Today, I'm here to discuss another deal with you." "What deal?" "I want all the shares in your hands." I put down the teacup, looked at him, and said word by word, "Name your price." Leonard was stunned. He probably thought I was here to haggle, not to pull the rug out from under him. "Nina, are you joking?" He laughed dryly. "Do I look like I'm joking?" I countered. The atmosphere instantly froze. I knew Starlight Technology had recent capital chain issues and urgently needed money to fill the gap. That's why they were eager to sell the Sky Dome system. But now, I wanted not just part of the technology, but the entire company. "Why should I sell to you?" he asked through gritted teeth. Because the sky dome system is mine. I tossed this sentence lightly, like a heavy bomb exploding in his mind. Leonard was completely dumbfounded. He stared at me fixedly, his lips moving, but no words came out. I watched him leisurely, not urging. I knew how impactful this news was for him. The core barrier he had always been proud of, the company's foundation, had never fully belonged to him from the start. And that mysterious shareholder he had only heard of but never seen was this junior sister he once thought he could easily win over. This cognitive subversion was enough to destroy a person's pride. After a long time, he found his voice, opening hoarsely, what evidence do you have? I smiled. Leonard, do you think I'd sit here talking to you without full confidence? I took out a document from my bag and pushed it to him. It was the technology equity agreement we signed back then, and the registration certificate for the Sky Dome system at the International Patent Office. The holder column clearly stated, Nina. His face instantly turned pale. Now, can we discuss the price? I asked. The subsequent negotiations had no suspense. Having lost the biggest bargaining chip, Sky Dome, Leonard had no grounds to haggle with me. In the end, I fully acquired Starlight technology at a quite reasonable, even bottom fishing price. The moment the contract was signed, Leonard looked at me, his eyes full of unwillingness and frustration. Nina, I really didn't expect you hid so deep. It's not that I hid deep, I packed the documents, stood up, it's that you never thought to see me clearly. Whether Leonard or Henry. In their eyes, women, especially beautiful women, should be greenhouse flowers, men's appendages. They couldn't imagine that this flower could also be a man-eating plant. Leaving the restaurant, I was in a great mood. Acquiring Starlight technology meant expanding Chinian capital's territory again. More importantly, the sharp sword of the Sky Dome system was finally fully in my hands. And this sword would soon be put to use. Back at the company, Lila excitedly gave me a bear hug. Nina, you're simply my god. Taking down Starlight technology without bloodshed, how did you do it? I briefly told her about the Sky Dome system. After hearing, she gaped, unable to close her mouth for a long time. Holy shit. So you're the legendary patent boss? Does that idiot Henry know his wife is a goose that lays golden eggs? He doesn't know, I shrugged, he only knows how much money I spent of his. Serves him right. Let him hug his white moonlight and regret to death. Lila said indignantly. I smiled but didn't speak. Regret? With Henry's arrogance, he probably would never think he was wrong. In his view, everything I did was just for money. While chatting, my assistant knocked and entered. Nina, there's a gentleman claiming to be your ex-husband who wants to see you. I frowned. Henry? How did he find this place? I had the assistant bring him to the reception room. Pushing open the door, I saw Henry sitting on the sofa, in a sharp suit that made him look even more tall and handsome. But his tightly locked brows and impatient expression ruined this handsomeness. Seeing me enter, he stood up, questioning unkindly, "This is your new company? Nina, how many things are you still hiding from me?" I walked to sit opposite him, hands folded on the table, in a businesslike tone, "Henry, we're divorced. My affairs seem to have no obligation to report to you." He was choked by me, his face looking worse. "I'm not here to argue with you." He took a deep breath, seemingly trying hard to suppress his temper. "Selena, she changed all the things you arranged at home." I raised an eyebrow, signaling him to continue. "Last night when I went back, I had a terrible headache and wanted to find the brand of painkillers you always kept, but couldn't find it anywhere. I called you and you didn't answer." His tone actually carried a hint of grievance. I almost laughed in anger. "I'm not here to argue with you." He took a deep breath, seemingly trying hard to suppress his temper. "Selena, she changed all the things you arranged at home." I raised an eyebrow, signaling him to continue. "Last night when I went back, I had a terrible headache and wanted to find the brand of painkillers you always kept, but couldn't find it anywhere. I called you and you didn't answer." His tone actually carried a hint of grievance. I almost laughed in anger. Henry, have you mistaken something? I'm your ex-wife, not your 24-hour personal nanny. If you have a headache, you should find your current partner or call the family doctor, not come to me. She doesn't know which brand I'm used to. He blurted out. Then you can tell her. I responded coldly, or let her learn slowly. Just like I did back then. When I first married him, I didn't know any of his preferences either. I spent a whole month memorizing all his living habits, dietary taboos, and allergens. I got up in the middle of the night to brew hangover soup for him, cared for him without rest when he was sick, researched various health recipes when he had stomach pain. No matter how well I did, in his eyes, it was just the duty of a substitute. He never gave me a word of thanks, not even a good face. Now, he comes to my company to accuse me over a small box of painkillers. How ridiculous. Nina, his voice sank, carrying a hint of warning, do you have to talk to me like this? Otherwise? Should I bow and scrape, be grateful like before? I met his gaze fearlessly. Henry, put away your overbearing CEO act. This is my company, not your goo family. I don't buy that. He probably had never been contradicted so bluntly by me, stunned for a moment. He looked at me, his eyes full of strangeness and inquiry, as if re-recognizing a completely unknown person. You've changed. After a long time, he uttered 3 words. I haven't changed. I've always been like this. I stood up, issuing the eviction. Henry, if there's nothing else, I'm very busy with work, excuse me. After saying that, I turned to leave. Wait. He called me again. Next weekend, Goo Group has an important project bidding conference. I hope you can accompany me. I stopped, turned back to look at him like looking at a fool. Why do you think I'd agree? Because you're still Margaret's nominal granddaughter-in-law. He threw out his only chip. This bidding is very important for Goo Group, and Grandma cares a lot too. I don't want to disappoint her. Using Grandma to pressure me again. Truly despicable. I sneered inwardly, but my face remained impassive. Which project? The Smart City project in the south of the city. Our competitor is the recently prominent Chilean capital. When he said this, his eyes were fixed on me, seeming to try to catch something on my face. However, I just calmly OA'd. Got it. I said indifferently, I'll go then. He seemed somewhat surprised that I agreed so readily, stunned before saying, good. After he left, Lila rushed in, full of indignation. This Henry, his face is as thick as a city wall? Asking his ex-wife to accompany him to a banquet, to bid against his ex-wife's own company? How does he come up with that? I picked up the coffee, gently sipped, a meaningful smile curling my lips. It's not that he came up with it, he's too confident. Confident in what? Confident that I still have feelings for him, confident I wouldn't dare break with him, confident I'm still the Nina he can manipulate. I put down the coffee cup, a cold light flashing in my eyes. Since he's proactively offering his face, I have no reason not to slap it. I'll go to the bidding conference. But not as Henry's wife. But as the founder of Chilean Capital, to give him a big gift. In the days before the bidding conference, Henry was unusually well behaved. He didn't call to harass me again, and Selena didn't cause trouble. The calm before the storm always makes one particularly anticipatory. I invested all of Chilean Capital's energy into the Smart City project. With the Sky Dome system as our ace core technology, plus my 3-year understanding of Goo Group's internal operations, our bid document was impeccable. Lila looked at the final version of the proposal, her eyes shining with excitement. Nina, we're sure to win this time. I can already see Henry's constipated face. I smiled. Don't get too happy too soon, underestimating the enemy is a military taboo. Though I said that, in my heart, I had 90% confidence. Although Goo Group is large, artificial intelligence has always been their weakness. And I happen to hold their vital point. On the day of the bidding conference, I chose a sharply tailored red suit skirt, accentuating my fair skin and beauty, with full aura. Leading my team, I walked into the venue spiritedly. As soon as I entered, I attracted everyone's attention. Chinian Capital has recently gained fame in the circle, but the founder Nina has always remained mysterious, never appearing in public. Today was the first time I stood in the spotlight as the founder of Chinian Capital. Many people showed surprised and amazed expressions upon seeing me. Of course, the most surprised was none other than Henry. He was chatting and laughing with several business tycoons, Selena like a beautiful canary, docilely nestled beside him. When he saw me and my team walking in through the exclusive entrance of Chinian Capital, the smile on his face froze instantly. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he stared at the nameplate on my chest that read Chinian Capital Nina, his eyes filled with shock and disbelief like a landslide. At that moment, the entire venue seemed muted. Everyone's gazes shuttled back and forth between me and Henry. Ex-wife turned rival? This plot was far more exciting than primetime family feuds. Selena was obviously dazed too, looking at me then at Henry, her delicate face full of confusion and helplessness. I ignored them, went straight to my seat, sat down, and started flipping through the materials in my hand, as if everything around was irrelevant to me. My team members were all shrewd, each minding their own business calmly. In contrast, Henry's side was in disarray. His vice presidents whispered, their faces ugly. Henry forced himself to calm down, giving me a deep look, his expression complex like a net, containing anger, betrayal, confusion, and a trace he himself hadn't noticed, panic. He lowered his voice and said something to his assistant beside him. The assistant immediately hurried away. I guessed he was sending someone to investigate Chinian Capital's background. Unfortunately, too late. The bidding conference officially began. After the host introduced the project background and bidding rules, the bidding companies took the stage one by one to present their proposals. When it was Gu Group's turn, Henry personally took the stage. He was, after all, the man in charge of a vast business empire, quickly adjusting his emotions and restoring his steady, confident demeanor. His speech was very persuasive, the PPT exquisitely made. Gu Group's proposal emphasized their strong capital, rich project management experience, and powerful government relations. Indeed very competitive. A round of enthusiastic applause erupted from the audience. Selena sat in the first row, looking at the man on stage with adoration, as if gazing at an omnipotent god. After Henry's speech, his gaze subtly swept over me with a hint of provocation. As if saying, "See? This is my strength. Your little antics are nothing." I returned a polite smile. Then, it was Chinian Capital's turn. I calmly walked onto the stage. The moment I stood at the podium, I could feel Henry's gaze locking onto me like a searchlight. I didn't look at him but scanned the audience, speaking clearly and forcefully. Distinguished judges, guests, good afternoon. I am the founder of Chinian Capital, Nina. Today, the proposal we bring has only one core advantage: technology. We possess the most core underlying architecture technology for the Smart City project, the SkyDome Artificial Intelligence Management System. When I uttered the word SkyDome, Henry's face changed instantly. His technical director even stood up abruptly from his seat, face full of horror. I ignored their reactions and continued my speech. I elaborated in detail on the advanced nature, stability, and security of the SkyDome system, and how it would empower the Smart City project. My speech had no flowery rhetoric, all substance and data. But every word was like a heavy hammer, smashing hard on Gu Group's weak spot. When my speech ended, the venue was first deadly silent, then erupted in even more enthusiastic applause than before. Everyone understood. Technology was the key to this project. And Chinian Capital held the absolute core technology. The bidding's outcome was decided. I walked off the stage and returned to my seat. Lila excitedly held my hand, whispering, "Nina, you were so cool just now." I smiled at her, turning my gaze to the judges' panel. Sure enough, the judges were whispering, their looks toward me full of approval. On the other side, Henry's face was so gloomy it could drip water. He probably never dreamed that his proud business empire would be checkmated by his always despised ex-wife using the technology he scorned most. During the intermission, people in the venue came over to exchange business cards and network with me. I handled it with ease and composure. At this moment, a sharp female voice shattered the harmonious atmosphere. "Nina, you thief. Do you have any conscience?" I turned back to see Selena with red eyes, pointing at me, looking aggrieved as if bullied. Her shout successfully attracted everyone's attention. "The good show has begun." I looked at her leisurely, asking indifferently, "Miss Selena, you can eat indiscriminately, but you can't speak indiscriminately. What did I steal from you?" "You stole Henry's company's core secrets." She said indignantly, "That Sky Dome system must have been stolen from Henry's computer when you were at the Goo home. You commercial spy, ungrateful wolf." She portrayed herself as an innocent, pure woman fighting injustice for her lover. She played this routine masterfully. The surrounding people began whispering, their looks toward me becoming subtle. After all, the plot of ex-wife stealing ex-husband's company secrets sounded very fitting for the melodramatic logic of wealthy family feuds. Henry also came over. He didn't stop Selena but looked at me with an extremely complex gaze, seeming to wait for an explanation. He perhaps preferred to believe I was a thief rather than admit I was much stronger than he imagined. Admitting that would shatter his pitiful male ego beyond repair. Watching their duet, I just found it laughable. Before I could speak, Lila couldn't hold back. "Miss Selena, speaking requires evidence. You say our Nina stole Goo's secrets, where's the evidence?" "Evidence?" Selena sneered. "A woman supported by the Goo family for 3 years, opens a company right after divorce and brings out such advanced technology. Isn't that obvious enough? If not stolen, could she have developed it herself?" Her words voiced what many present thought. They didn't believe a seemingly weak woman could have such powerful abilities. They preferred to believe that behind all this, there must be shady deals. I laughed, lightly and breezily. "Miss Selena, there's something you may not know." Facing everyone's gazes, I said word by word, clearly, the Sky Dome system was indeed developed by me. Its patent registration time was 4 years ago. And I married Henry 3 years ago. Additionally, before our marriage, I signed a detailed prenuptial property agreement with Mr. Henry, which clearly states in black and white that this patent belongs to my personal premarital property. I paused, turning my gaze to Henry, whose face had turned ashen, delivering the final blow. "This agreement, Henry, you signed it personally back then. You haven't forgotten, have you?" My words were like a depth charge, exploding among the crowd. Everyone was stunned. Premarital property? Personal signature? This meant Henry knew about this technology from the beginning and acknowledged it as my personal property. Selena's so-called theft became a complete joke. All eyes turned sharply to Henry. His face went from white to green to purple, as colorful as a palette. Of course he remembered that agreement. Back then, eager to marry me to comfort Grandma, he signed the thick agreement Lila brought without even looking. In his eyes, I was just a woman who would sell everything for money. That agreement was merely my chip to demand more breakup fee. He never dreamed that it buried a mind capable of overturning his entire business empire. Selena was also dumbfounded, looking at Henry incredulously. "Henry, is what she said true? You knew?" Henry's lips moved, but no words came out. "Admit it? Admit he made such a stupid mistake 3 years ago? Admit he was played by a woman?" His pride wouldn't allow it. But not admitting, the black and white in my hand was the loudest slap. Watching his embarrassed look, I felt no pleasure, only a sense of dust settling calmly. I turned to Selena, smiling. "Miss Selena, do you still think I'm a thief now?" Selena's face flushed red. She looked to Henry for help, hoping he would stand up for her. However, Henry just stared at me fixedly, his eyes turbulent, unable to attend to her. "No, impossible." Selena murmured, seeming unable to accept this fact. How could you develop something so amazing? You're clearly just a what?" I kindly reminded her, a daughter flower that only does laundry and cooking, living attached to men? The smile on my face gradually cooled. Miss Selena, put away your outdated gender biases. Women can do far more than you imagine. In this era, living by brains is much more reliable than living by men. After saying that, I ignored her, turned to Lila, let's go, to the VIP room to wait for the results. We walked past the petrified Henry and Selena, leaving them a dashing back view. Behind us were rising discussions and the crazy clicks of camera shutters. I knew tomorrow's headlines in City A were set. The bidding result had no suspense. Cheney and Capital won the Smart City project with absolute advantage. As the news spread, GU Group's stock price plummeted, evaporating tens of billions in an hour. The entire business world in City A exploded. No one expected this seemingly uneven contest to end in such a dramatic way. The once invincible business emperor Henry was ruthlessly stepped on by his most despised ex-wife. And Nina, this name spread throughout City A overnight. Cheney and Capital's phones were nearly blown up. Countless cooperation invitations and investment intentions flew in like snowflakes. My team and I were busy without touching the ground. But I enjoyed this busyness. This was the empire I built with my own abilities, every step solid and firm. In the evening, the company held a small celebration banquet. Everyone was excited, toasting to this hard-won victory. Lila drank a bit much, hugging me and sighing, Nina, I'm really happy for you. You finally don't have to look at that dog man's face anymore. I smiled. I never looked at his face, I looked at the contract. Lila was stunned, then burst into laughter, right. The contract. To our great contractual spirit. We laughed together. After the celebration banquet, I returned to my apartment. Just opening the door, I smelled a strong alcohol odor. On the living room sofa sat a decadent figure. It was Henry. I didn't know how he got in. Perhaps using a spare key left before, or hiring a locksmith. But that wasn't important. I turned on the light, the living room instantly bright as day. He seemed unaccustomed to the sudden light, subconsciously raising his hand to shield his eyes. He looked very disheveled. The expensive suit was wrinkled, the tie loosely hanging around his neck, hair somewhat messy. Several empty wine bottles scattered on the floor. This appearance was worlds apart from the always superior, meticulous Henry. He lowered his hand, his bloodshot red eyes looking at me. You planned this long ago, didn't you? His voice was extremely hoarse. From 3 years ago, no, from 4 years ago, you set up such a big trap, just for today? I walked to the bar, poured myself a glass of water, without answering his question. What did you take me for? A fool? A stepping stone? He stood up, approaching me step by step, emotions somewhat out of control. You used me, used the GU family, to complete your primitive accumulation, then at my most critical moment, gave me a fatal blow. Nina, what is your heart made of? Stone? I drank some water, moistened my throat, then looked at him calmly. Henry, have you forgotten that initially, you approached me? It was you who needed a substitute to comfort your grandmother, to block the outside world's mouths. It was you who measured our relationship with money, turning our marriage into a clearly priced transaction. From beginning to end, we were just partners. I provided emotional value for you, you provided financial support for me. Each taking what we need, owing nothing. I used you? Didn't you use my face similar to Selena's? Every word of mine was like a knife stabbing hard into his heart. He was rendered speechless by my questions, his face pale. Yes, from the start, it was a transaction. He never treated me as a wife, and how could I treat him as a husband? But he was used to controlling everything, unable to accept being the one calculated against. Then, what about those 3 years? He seemed to grasp the last straw, asking with a trembling voice, the 3 years we were together, were they all fake? You really have no feelings for me at all? When he asked this, his eyes actually carried a hint of expectation. Looking at him, I suddenly felt somewhat pitiful. He still didn't understand where the problem was. Feelings? I laughed, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. Henry, do you think a woman reminded daily by her husband that she's just a substitute, a woman who has to be careful with every word at home for fear of angering you, a woman who guarded you for 3 days and nights when sick, only to get Selena could do this too upon waking, would have feelings for you? My voice was light, but every word pierced the heart. Henry's body swayed, as if all strength was drained, staggering back 2 steps and collapsing onto the sofa. Those details ignored for 3 years, those contributions taken for granted, now replayed frame by frame in his mind like a movie. I got up at 6 every morning to prepare breakfast at just the right temperature for him. Knowing he disliked scallions, ginger, and garlic, I personally picked them out of every dish. Knowing his migraine issues, the home always had his habitual painkillers and massager. Knowing his light sleep, his bedroom was always absolutely quiet and dark. I managed everything for him, allowing him to fight in the business world without worries. And what did I get? After his all-night calls with Selena, a cold face toward me the next day. In front of friends, unabashedly mocking me as useless except for that face. Drunk, hugging me but calling Selena. Again and again. I wasn't heartless, my heart had been ground into an indestructible stone in these 3 years of indifference and contempt. Everything I did was just fulfilling my contract. I calmly made the final statement, now, the contract is over, and it's time for me to clock out. Henry, between us, there was always only transaction, no feelings. Not before, not now, and never in the future. My words, like a final verdict, completely crushed him. He held his head with both hands, painfully burying it in his knees, shoulders slightly trembling. For the first time, I saw him so vulnerable and helpless. But in my heart, there was no pity. If he knew this day would come, why did he act that way? Leave the key, then leave my home. I coldly threw this sentence, turned into the bedroom, and closed the door. I didn't look at him again. Between us, there was nothing left to say. The next morning, when I got up, Henry was gone. On the coffee table was a key. The apartment no longer had his presence. My life was finally completely clean. In the following days, I was busy like a spinning top. The Smart City project officially started, with countless threads needing my decisions. I was almost daily immersed in the company, meetings, reviewing documents, meeting clients. Though tiring, it was fulfilling. I no longer needed to guess another's thoughts, no longer live in someone's shadow. I am me, Nina. During this time, an unexpected thing happened. Margaret passed away. The old lady went peacefully, in her sleep. When Thomas called me, I was on a business trip out of town. I immediately booked the earliest flight back. At the funeral, I saw Henry. He had lost a lot of weight, looked much haggard, enveloped in gloom. Seeing me, he just tugged his lips, showing a smile uglier than crying. We had no interaction throughout. As granddaughter-in-law, I saw the old lady off on her last journey. This was what I promised her. After the funeral, the Gu family's lawyer found me, saying the old lady left a will with a portion for me. I was somewhat surprised. In the lawyer's office, I saw the will. The old lady left me 10% of Gu Group shares under her name. At current stock prices, this was an astronomical sum. At the end of the will was a handwritten paragraph by the old lady, "Good child, Grandma knows you're not Selena. Grandma's eyes may be blurry, but her heart isn't blind. These 3 years, you've been wronged. That rascal Henry was spoiled by me and doesn't know to cherish. Grandma can't give you anything else, only this bit to compensate you somewhat. Hope in the future, you live for yourself, live happily, live freely." Looking at that familiar handwriting, my tears finally couldn't be held back. So, she knew everything. She knew I wasn't Selena, yet still gave me the most sincere love and protection. She was the only one in this cold Gu family who gave me warmth. Henry also saw that paragraph, standing behind me, body stiff, silent. I didn't know what he was thinking at that moment. Perhaps shock, perhaps shame, perhaps regret. But these were irrelevant to me. I wiped my tears and said to the lawyer, I renounce inheriting this legacy. The lawyer and Henry were both stunned. Miss Nina, are you sure? This is 10% of Goo Group shares. The lawyer couldn't believe his ears. I'm sure. I nodded. Grandma's kindness to me, I remember in my heart. But this thing is too valuable, I can't accept it. After saying that, I signed the renunciation of inheritance statement and turned to leave the law firm. I didn't look back at Henry's expression. I just wanted to leave this suffocating place as soon as possible. The news of me renouncing the Goo Group shares quickly spread in the circle. Everyone thought I was crazy. Foregoing such immense wealth, what kind of saintly behavior? Lila also called to ask, Nina, are you stupid? Why not take the money delivered for free? That's what you deserve. Standing at the company's floor-to-ceiling window, looking at the dazzling night view outside, I said calmly, Lila, some things are more important than money. Like what? Like peace of mind. I didn't want any ties with the Goo family anymore. That 10% shares, to me, weren't wealth but shackles. I had finally broken free and didn't want to be chained again. Moreover, now I no longer need others' charity to prove my value. I have my own career, my own future. I can create wealth not inferior to anyone's with my own hands. After hanging up, I rubbed my swelling temples. Lately, I was really too tired. The project entered a critical phase, with almost no rest time. Assistant Cheryl brought in a cup of coffee, saying worriedly, Nina, your complexion isn't good, should you go to the hospital? I waved, it's fine, old issue, rest a bit and it'll be okay. My stomach has always been bad, a root cause from irregular eating while caring for Henry back then. Unexpectedly, after divorce, this only souvenir remained. Truly ironic. While thinking, my phone rang. An unknown number. I originally didn't want to answer, but inexplicably, I pressed accept. From the other end came a soft voice with a hint of triumph. It was Selena. Nina, long time no see. What's up? My tone was cold. Nothing major, just wanted to tell you that Henry and I are getting engaged. Her voice was full of boastful tone, next month on the 8th, at the Hilton Hotel. I'll send you an invitation, you must come. She probably wanted to see my painful, jealous reaction. Unfortunately, she would be disappointed. I just felt noisy. Congratulations. I indifferently uttered 2 words, no need to send the invitation, I'm not free. Also, don't call me again, I don't want to hear any news about you. After saying that, I was about to hang up. Wait. She hurriedly called me, Nina, don't be smug. You think you've won? Can you fight me? The person Henry loves in his heart has always been only me. You were just a substitute when I was away. Now that I'm back, you should roll far away. You think winning the Smart City project is so great? I tell you, with one word from me, Henry can make your company unable to stay in City A. Listening to her stern but inwardly weak threats, I just found it funny. Is that so? I chuckled lightly, then I'll wait and see. However, Miss Selena, there's something I must remind you. A woman who needs to threaten the ex to secure her position, do you think how much weight you have in the heart of the man you love? Your so-called love, is it real, or your one-sided fantasy? Have you thought it through yourself? I didn't wait for her answer, directly hung up, then blocked. Dealing with such clowns, the best way is to ignore. Because you never know where their bottom line is. I thought Selena was just talking tough. Unexpectedly, she really did as said. In a few days, Cheney and Capital encountered trouble. First, several long-term suppliers suddenly unilaterally announced contract termination, willing to pay high penalties. Then, banks tightened our credit lines citing risk assessment. The most fatal was the Smart City project being halted by relevant departments citing technical safety hazards. Suddenly, the company was in turmoil inside and out. Everyone knew this was Goo Group pulling strings behind. In City A, Goo Group was heaven. Offending Goo was seeking death. Several executives were worried, some even considering resignation. Lila cursed angrily in the office, "Henry, this scumbag. Can't afford to lose. Lost the bid himself, uses such despicable means. And that Selena, truly a jinx." I looked out the window, expression calm. What's the rush? The good show is just starting. I had long expected Henry to counterattack. With his personality, he wouldn't let it go. He was forcing me to bow, to beg. Unfortunately, he miscalculated. In my dictionary, Nina, there are no words give up. I held an emergency meeting to stabilize morale. Then, I began breaking them one by one. For suppliers, I used my accumulated connections over years, quickly found new alternatives at better prices. For banks, I directly used companies' own funds to fill the gap and contacted overseas venture capitals. They were very optimistic about Chinyan's prospects and willing to provide more support. The hardest was the government side. I knew Henry must have used his network. Head on, I wasn't his match. So, I had to change approach. I invited a friend who was chief editor at a financial media for dinner. I unintentionally revealed some insides about the Smart City project halt. For example, a large enterprise, due to bidding failure, maliciously suppressed the winning private enterprise, using improper means to interfere in market competition. For example, the project's core technology Sky Dome system had patent protections in multiple overseas countries and passed the strictest security certifications. The so-called technical safety hazards were completely fabricated. My friend was shrewd and immediately understood my intent. The next day, an in-depth report titled "Business Giants Suppressing Innovative Enterprises, Who is Strangling Our Future," appeared on major news sites' headlines. Though not naming names, all details pointed to GU Group. One stone stirred 1,000 waves. Public opinion erupted instantly. Netizens began digging deep into the truth behind. Soon, GU's bidding failure, ex-wife's comeback, White Moonlight's return, and a series of melodramatic plots were exposed thoroughly. GU Group's PR department was overwhelmed. Stock price plummeted again. Meanwhile, Chinyan Capital, as a victim suppressed by giants but stubbornly resisting, gained massive sympathy and support. Relevant departments, under public pressure, restarted the safety review of the Sky Dome system. The review result, naturally, fully qualified. The Smart City project was unbanned. This beautiful public opinion counterattack caught GU off guard. And I, watching from the sidelines, unscathed. Henry was probably pushed to the limit by me. That evening, he directly blocked me downstairs from my company. He looked even more haggard than last time, eyes full of red bloodshots, chin with blue stubble. He grabbed my arm, strength almost crushing my bones. "Nina, what do you want exactly?" He asked through gritted teeth, voice full of frustration and powerlessness. "Must you destroy me, destroy GU, to be satisfied?" I forcefully shook off his hand, looking at him coldly. "Henry, have you got it wrong? From start to end, it's not what I want, but what you want. It was you who couldn't afford to lose the bid, using despicable means behind to trip me. It was you who indulged your fiancé in baseless slander and attacks on me. It was you who wanted to put me to death, to destroy my company. Everything I did was just legitimate defense. How in your mouth does it become me wanting to destroy you? Is it only allowed for you, Henry, to suppress others, but not for others to resist?" My words, like sharp knives, pierced him thoroughly. He opened his mouth but found himself unable to refute. Yes, he struck first. He thought I could be manipulated at will, but didn't expect this supposed soft persimmon was actually a hard bone that hurts the teeth. I didn't want to destroy you," he murmured, voice with a hint of panic he hadn't noticed. I just wanted you to come back." I seemed to hear the biggest joke. "Come back? Back where?" "Back to that cold villa, continue being your substitute nanny?" "Henry, is your brain broken? Why do you think, after I already own the whole forest, I'd turn back to miss your crooked tree? You." He was angered to pale face, his pointing hand trembling. Also, I looked at him, saying word by word, "Put away your pitiful, self-righteous affection. You don't love me, you love the illusion that is completely obedient to you, satisfying all your control desires. The reason you can't forget me, Nina, isn't because you love me, but because you can't accept the fact that I'm no longer under your control. What you miss isn't me as a person, but the past where you could trample my dignity at will, and I never resisted. You're just unwilling." After saying that, I didn't look at him again, turned and walked away. He didn't chase after. From the rearview mirror, I saw him standing alone under the streetlight, his shadow stretched long, full of desolation and loneliness. At that moment, I finally felt a trace of satisfaction. Not from revenge's pleasure, but because I finally tore apart his self-deceptive outer layer with my own hands, making him see his true and ugly inner self. "Henry, your greatest sorrow isn't losing me, but that you never knew what you truly wanted." Gu's crisis didn't end with the project's unban. The ongoing public opinion fermentation, plus stock plunge, made many shareholders question Henry's management ability. Several company elders began uniting, preparing to impeach him at the board meeting. Under internal and external troubles, Henry was overwhelmed. And Selena, whom he thought was a comforting flower, not only didn't help but kept causing chaos. Either cursing netizens on social media today, or tearfully questioning Henry tomorrow why he didn't vent for her. It's said they argued many times over this. Their planned engagement banquet was postponed indefinitely. All this was told by Lila. Like a war correspondent, she reported the enemy's latest situation daily. I listened without ripples in my heart. These were irrelevant to me. My smart city project proceeded very smoothly. Chilean capital's reputation grew louder. I began appearing frequently at various financial summits and forums, sharing my experience as a representative of the new generation of successful female entrepreneurs. Standing in the spotlight, confident, composed, radiant. No longer the Nina who needed to hide behind others. That day, after a forum, as I prepared to leave, someone called me. It was Quentin, Henry's close buddy and Selena's top supporter. He looked somewhat haggard, his gaze toward me complex. "Miss Nina, can we chat?" he asked, tone surprisingly polite. I raised an eyebrow and nodded. We found a cafe and sat. "I apologize on behalf of Selena." His opening surprised me. At the bidding conference before, she was too impulsive, said things she shouldn't, hope you don't take it to heart. I looked at him without speaking. And Henry, he paused, continuing, lately, he's under great pressure. Company matters, and things with you and Selena, pushing him to collapse. He actually isn't a bad person. He just cares too much about Selena. Hearing this, I couldn't help laughing. "Mr. Quentin, you came to me today just to say these? Do you think, after all I'd been through, I'd believe such weak explanations?" He's not bad? A man who for his white moonlight can trample the substitute's dignity at will, isn't bad? A man who to suppress rivals can use unfair competition means, isn't bad? "Mr. Quentin, are you telling me a joke?" My counter-questions left him speechless. He opened his mouth, seeming to want to defend, but ultimately just sighed. "Miss Nina, I know we wronged you." He looked at me, eyes with a plea, but Gu is Henry's grandfather's lifelong effort, it can't be destroyed like this. I beg you, show mercy, let Henry go, let Gu go. As long as you stop, we can discuss any conditions. Looking at him, I suddenly found it amusing. Let him go? When he suppressed me back then, why didn't he think to let me go? Now can't fight, come begging for mercy? No such cheap deal in the world. "Mr. Quentin, go back and tell Henry." I stood up, looking down at him, saying word by word, "Business is like battlefield, winner king, loser bandit." Since he dared start the war, he must have the resolve to bear the consequences. Want me to stop? Possible. Let him come beg me personally. Henry eventually came. The day after he was officially dismissed as CEO by the board. He came to my office. no appointment, directly barged in. He looked like he aged 10 years overnight. Hair gray, eyes sunken, the once valuable suit hanging loosely. He was no longer the spirited business emperor. Just a dethroned, down-and-out king. He stood before my desk, silently looking at me. After a long time, he hoarsely said, "I lost." I looked up, calmly at him. "Yes. You won." He said again. "Yes." I remained calm. He suddenly laughed, uglier than crying. "Nina, you really have good means. You're too kind." He pulled a chair, sat opposite, as if using all his strength. "Say it, your conditions." He said, "As long as I can do it, as long as you let Gu go." Looking at him, I suddenly felt tasteless. I once thought stepping on him, seeing him beg, would bring immense pleasure. But at this moment, my heart had only emptiness. The end of revenge is nothingness. "I have no conditions," I said indifferently. He was stunned. "What do you mean?" "It means I'm not interested in Gu." I said, "From the start, my goal wasn't to crush you or annex Gu. I just wanted to take back what's mine, protect my own career. It was you who repeatedly provoked, forcing us to this point today." He looked at me incredulously. You put in so much effort, not to revenge me?" "Revenge you?" I laughed. "Henry, you overestimate yourself. To me, you're just an unpleasant past. I've long turned the page. It's you who always live in the past, unwilling to come out." My words, like a heavy punch, hit his heart hard. He stared at me dazedly, eyes full of confusion and pain. He always thought everything I did was because I hated him. He even enjoyed this being hated to some extent. Because hate also means care. But now, I told him I don't care about him at all. This was harder for him to accept than any revenge. "Then, why did you?" He opened difficultly, seeming to ask why I didn't accept his plea. I interrupted before he finished. "The reason I wouldn't stop isn't because I hate you, but because I want everyone to see. See that capital can't do as it pleases. See that rules must be respected. See that women shouldn't be objectified, shouldn't be belittled. I'm not to defeat you, Henry, alone, but to defeat the corrupt, arrogant, self-righteous values you represent." I stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking at this city I fought for. "Henry, your era has passed." Henry left. When leaving, he said nothing, just his back figure extremely desolate and aged. Soon after he left, I stopped the public opinion attacks on Gu. As I said, my purpose was achieved. As for Gu's future, that's their own matter, irrelevant to me. After some time, I heard Selena and Henry dissolve their engagement. After Henry lost everything, this so-called white moonlight unhesitatingly chose to leave, seeking her next target. This result didn't surprise me at all. A woman who can only share sweetness, not hardship, her so-called love was inherently fragile. And I welcomed a new chapter in my life. Chilean Capital achieved great success on the Smart City project, leaping to a top domestic tech investment company. As founder, my net worth multiplied, becoming an object of admiration for countless people. Various honors and halos came one after another. But I knew this was just the beginning. My journey is to the stars and seas. That day, after a forum, as I prepared to leave, someone called me. Former Gu Group CEO Henry, this morning at dawn, in his private villa, died from carbon monoxide poisoning despite rescue efforts. Police preliminarily judge it as suicide. Looking at those words, I was stunned. Henry, dead? My heart felt like something gripped it hard, a subtle sting. I thought my heart was already still as water. But unexpectedly, hearing his death news still touched me. Not love, nor hate. But a complex, indescribable emotion. Like a nightmare entangling you for long, suddenly ending in such a tragic way. Making one sigh, and feel melancholic. I didn't attend Henry's funeral. Between us, already settled. He chose to end his life this way, his own decision, I have no right to comment, nor intent to evaluate. Just occasionally, in the dead of night, I still think of him. Remembering his first sight of me, that amazed yet restrained gaze. Remembering his rare warmth in front of Grandma. Remembering his repeated loss of control and defeats before me. He was a bastard, also a pitiful person. Trapped by his own pride and arrogance for life, ultimately destroyed by it. If back then, he could let go of that ridiculous obsession, look at the person beside him. If back then, I could be braver, tell him I'm not anyone's substitute. Would our ending be different? But life has no ifs. Let past things go with the wind. What I need to do is live in the present, look to the future. The Smart City Project Phase 1 completed perfectly. At the celebration banquet, the young project team surrounded me, laughing and joking. They called me Nina Fairy, saying I'm their idol. Looking at their vibrant faces, it was like seeing myself many years ago. Back then, I too was full of fantasies about the future, expectations for love. Later, reality hurt me thoroughly. But I didn't fall. I turned those wounds into my armor. Alone, I cut through thorns, killed a bloody path. Now, standing at the peak overlooking the empire I built, I can finally live for myself. 1 year later. Chilean Capital has become the industry's leading enterprise, Business Global. That day, I was in Paris attending an international AI summit. During break, I strolled alone by the Seine. Sunset glow on the river, sparkling, indescribably beautiful. A street artist called me, saying to paint me. I gladly agreed. I sat on the bench, looking at the distant Eiffel Tower, expression serene and calm. The artist finished quickly. He handed me the painting. In it, I wore a sharp white suit, faint smile on lips, eyes with stars, sea, transparency, and relief after seeing 1,000 sails. Lady, you're the most story-filled woman I've seen. The artist said in not very fluent English. I smiled. Yes, have stories. But those stories are all past. I paid, took the painting, continued walking. Coming toward me was a man. In casual wear, blonde hair, blue eyes, tall, handsome, like an elegant gentleman. Seeing me, he stunned, then showed a friendly smile. Excuse me, are you the founder of Sky Dome, Miss Nina? He asked, Chinese pronounced perfectly. I was somewhat surprised. Yes, who are you? Hello, I'm Eric, chief architect of AlphaGo. He extended his hand. I've followed you for a long time, your Sky Dome system is remarkable. AlphaGo? That's a hall-level existence in AI. I didn't expect to meet their chief architect here in this way. I extended my hand, shook his. Hello, Mr. Eric, long admired. We smiled at each other. The wind by the Seine gently blew. I knew a new story was about to begin. And this time, the protagonist is only me, Nina. Eric and I got along well. We chatted from AI's future to universe's origin, from latest tech breakthroughs to each other's favorite sci-fi movies. He was erudite, witty, and very respectful of women. Chatting with him was enjoyable. We exchanged contacts, agreed to deeper technical exchanges after returning home. At parting, he looked at me, blue eyes full of appreciation and sincerity. Miss Nina, hope we have more cooperation opportunities in the future. I hope so too. I smiled in reply. Watching his departing back, I suddenly felt life wasn't so boring. Perhaps I can try accepting a new relationship. One built on equality, respect, and mutual appreciation. Not anyone's substitute, nor appendage. Just two interesting souls attracting and achieving each other. After returning, Eric and I kept close contact. We often dined together, visited exhibitions, discussed technical issues. He was like a treasure, always bringing new surprises. Company colleagues noticed, teasing me that the iron tree bloomed. Lila was even more excited, daily nagging me to quickly grab this peerless good man. I said let it be, but in my heart, ripples arose. That day was my birthday. I didn't make it big, just simple dinner at my apartment with Lila and several core executives. After dinner, everyone clamored for me to make a wish. I closed my eyes, hands together. I wish the people I love and who love me to be healthy and happy. I wish my career to reach new heights. I wish to have the courage to be loved. Just after wishing, the doorbell rang. Lila opened the door. Standing there was Eric holding a large bouquet of blue roses. In white suit, like a prince from fairy tale. He walked to me, knelt on one knee, opened a velvet box. Inside, a dazzling diamond ring. Nina, he looked at me affectionately, blue eyes as if with flowing stars. I'm not one for flowery words. I only know, from the first sight of you, I was attracted. Your wisdom, resilience, kindness, everything about you fascinates me. I don't want to be your past, nor just part of your present. I want to be your future. Miss Nina, are you willing to give me this chance? My tears surged instantly. This time, not from grievance, not pain, but from happiness. Looking at him, I nodded forcefully. I do. I thought the story should end here with Prince and Princess living happily. But life is always a bit more complex than fairy tales. Soon after Eric and I got engaged, Cheney and Capital prepared for a NASDAQ listing. This was an important step for the company, another peak in my career. The listing roadshow went very smoothly. Investors were very optimistic about Cheney's prospects. At this critical moment, an accident happened. An obscure small U.S. company suddenly sued us for patent infringement, accusing our Sky Dome system of violating their core patent. And they requested the court to immediately prohibit Cheney and Capital's listing process. This sudden accusation caught us off guard. If not resolved properly, our listing plan would be completely ruined. The company's stock price would inevitably suffer a heavy blow. I immediately organized legal and technical teams for investigation. The result shocked us. The patent they presented, whether technical architecture or core algorithms, had striking similarities to the Sky Dome system. And their patent application time was actually 3 months earlier than mine. How is this possible? Sky Dome was developed independently by me with blood and sweat, absolutely no plagiarism. The only explanation is that during development, my core code was leaked. But people who could access my core code were few. Who exactly? I locked myself in the office for a whole day. I pulled all emails, server logs, code commit records from 4 years ago when developing Sky Dome. I screened repeatedly, not missing any suspicious detail. Finally, in an encrypted email attachment, I found a clue. It was an email I sent to Henry. Back then, we had just married shortly. He was still polite to me, occasionally caring about my hobbies. Once, he asked what I was researching. At that time, I still had a trace of fantasy about him, hoping he could see my value beyond that face. So, I sent him the initial model of Sky Dome, wanting his opinion. In the email, I detailed my design ideas and technical architecture. Thinking now, it's ridiculous. He, a layman who can't distinguish C language from C++, what opinion could he give? He just perfunctorily replied not bad, and no more. I thought the matter passed. But unexpectedly, the problem was here. I immediately had technicians track the email's flow. Result found this email stayed in Henry's inbox less than 10 minutes before forwarded to another unfamiliar email. And that email's registration was in the US. All clues pointed to one person. Henry. My heart sank to the bottom. I thought he was dead, our grudges settled. But unexpectedly, as early as 4 years ago, he buried such a big mine for me. What exactly did he want? To find the truth, I flew to the US. I found the company suing us. It was a shell company, registered in a remote town, with no actual business. Through special channels, I found the company's behind-the-scenes holder. Seeing that name, I was stunned. Not Henry. But Selena. So, it was her. I instantly figured out all links. Back then, Henry forwarded my email to Selena. Perhaps to show off, or to please. And Selena, this seemingly weak and harmless woman, had extraordinary ambition and scheming. She took my technology, preemptively registered patent in the US. She was waiting for an opportunity. Waiting for me to grow the company, prepare for listing, stand at the highest point, then use this patent for a fatal blow. She wanted not money. She wanted to destroy me. Destroy this substitute that made her jealous and hateful. Truly, such a vicious heart. Standing at that empty office door, I felt a bone-chilling cold rise from my feet, spreading instantly. I didn't alert her. I quietly returned home, then began laying out. Since Selena wanted to play, I'd play a big game with her. First, I had the PR team issue a statement respecting IP but absolutely not accepting any malicious litigation or extortion. Then, legal team formally responded in the US, posturing to fight to the end. This successfully lulled Selena. She thought I was cornered, could only defend passively. She began passing messages through intermediaries, hinting that if I abandoned listing and publicly apologized to her, she could consider withdrawing the lawsuit. What she wanted to see was me kneeling before her, begging. I played along, showing hesitation and wavering, feigning with her. Secretly, I sent top private detectives to investigate one thing. The truth about Henry's death. I always felt his death wasn't so simple. A person proud to the bone, how could he easily choose suicide? Especially after he had nothing left. It didn't make sense. Sure enough, soon the detectives brought shocking news. Henry's death wasn't suicide. It was murder. And the killer was Selena. It was her who tampered in Henry's villa, creating the gas leak illusion. Her motive was simple. After dismissal, Henry's mental state was unstable. Once drunk, he confided to Quentin he regretted not cherishing me back then. He even said he would go to the US, find the patent truth, clear my name. He said he owed me and wanted to repay. These words were heard by Selena. She was scared. Scared Henry would really uncover the truth, expose everything of hers. So, she went all out, murdered to silence. After getting solid evidence, I didn't report immediately. I was waiting for a timing. One that could ruin her reputation, never to recover. On court day, Selena attended in full dress. In white Chanel suit, exquisite makeup, like a proud swan. Sitting in plaintiff's seat, looking at me with victor's posture. Media lenses all aimed at us. Everyone thought this would be a no-suspense trial. Cheney and Capital's founder Nina was about to fall from grace. Trial began. Selena's lawyer presented the U.S. registered patent certificate, confidently accusing us of infringement. When our defense turned, my lawyer stood. He didn't refute the accusation but submitted new evidence to the judge. A recording. In it, Henry and Selena's dialogue. Selena, tell me, what's with that patent? Did you take Nina's stuff? Henry, what are you saying? I don't understand. That's my own research result. Don't lie. I know Nina's character, she disdains plagiarism. Tell me the truth, was it you? Enough. Henry. You still protect that bitch now. Do you have me in your heart? Yes, I took her stuff, so what? She's a substitute, what right to own such good things? Those should be mine. Mine. Recording finished, the court deadly silent. Selena's face instantly drained of color. She never thought Henry would record. This wasn't over. My lawyer then submitted second evidence. A video. In it, Selena sneaking into Henry's villa, sabotaging gas pipes. And her monetary transaction with the forensic who falsified for her. Ironclad evidence. Selena completely collapsed. Screaming, roaring, like a madwoman, held down by bailiffs. No. Not me. It's Nina. She framed me. Her. However, no amount of sophistry helped. Awaiting her was the law's severest sanction. Court ruled, Cheney and Capital wins. All accusations invalid. walking out of court, sunlight just right. Countless reporters surged, surrounding me. Eric pushed through the crowd, came to my side, hugged me tightly. "It's all over," he whispered in my ear. I leaned in his arms, nodded. Yes, all over. Those who loved me, harmed me, those I loved, hated. All grudges and affection settled. My life finally completely reset. Can start anew. I looked up at the azure sky, showing a heartfelt, brilliant smile. Hello, world. I'm Nina. Please advise.